Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine and I have a delicious recipe to share with you today. This is Indian Daal and I got this recipe in part by my sister-in-law. This is a little family cookbook that we made. I also have this little recipe from the Martha Stewart magazine. I'm going to combine both recipes and also add a couple of my own touches. Now there's a fast way to do this and there is this way to do this. You can find the shortened version down in the description box below. I've linked that video as well. I'm going to start by peeling 2 potatoes and I'm going to rinse these off and cook them in my Instant Pot, but first I'm going to save all of that for my compost bin. Okay, so I'm going to just add a little bit of water. The water's already hot but doesn't need to be, and I'm going to cook it for 12 minutes in the Instant Pot. In the meantime, I'm going to prepare the other ingredients. I'm sharing this recipe in the order that I did it in rather than each of these parts of the recipe by themselves. So I'm going to get the onions going because that's going to take probably the longest out of everything that we're making. And I am going to saute it with olive oil, or you can choose your oil of choice. I've got a couple of cumin seeds here that I'm going to add to this side. I'm going to brown those almost to black. And that's going to be added into the rest of the onions, but I'm going to keep it kind of on the side as it's cooking, and a couple of chili peppers as well. And you can make this as spicy or as mild as you wish. While that's cooking, I'm going to prepare the cauliflower. I have about half a head of cauliflower, but honestly, this is a family favorite. I would say just do the entire head of cauliflower, rinse it, and then just cut it up into large pieces. You don't want too many small pieces, otherwise those burn while everything else is frying. And I'm going to put it into a really hot pan, and that's going to allow the water that's on it sort of to dry up before you add your oil. I've done it the other way around in the past, and the oil goes all over the place. Okay, so I'm just sauteing those onions. The onions take a long time, so while that's working, I'm adding a little bit of olive oil to the cauliflower. You will need a lot more oil to saute these and to really kind of fry them up. I'm also going to season with a bit of salt. I'm going to be seasoning along the way with salt and sometimes black pepper throughout every step of this process. So that's just the cumin seeds. You can see that they're not quite black enough yet. You still want to let those cook along with the cauliflower. And while that's working, we're going to start to do our dal. And these are red lentils. I have about 1.5 cups, and I'm going to soak them and rinse them. This is an important part of the process. And so I've just got some cold water in here just to let them sit for a little bit while I work on other parts of this recipe. I'm going to be doing some garlic and ginger. I'm going to smash those and peel them. And in the meantime, we're going to check on some of the other things that we're working on. The onions need a lot of paying attention to so that they don't burn, because you want them to get to that just right crispy but not overburnt level. And then we're going to rinse our dal or red lentils several times with cool, fresh water. And we're going to just let that sit for a little bit. So in the meantime, our potatoes are done. So I'm just going to go ahead and open that up and set them aside. Check on the onions again. Now I've kind of incorporated those cumin seeds along with the onions at this point. I'm going to use my little rice cooker to cook my lentils, but I added way too much and it's not going to cook in here. But if you do a smaller portion, then it will. I'm going to go ahead and smash up 3 garlic cloves and a bit of ginger and set that aside while we work on more parts of this recipe. So I'm going to start to put my spices together. I'm doing 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric and paprika. I'm also going to use cumin as well, but I put my cumin seeds into a grinder and now I have fresh ground cumin as well as some black pepper. And to a fresh pot, I'm going to add some more chili peppers and my olive oil, the garlic ginger mix, and let that kind of cook a little bit. You don't want to overcook that at all. I'm going to add my spices as well. Oh my goodness, it smells amazing. And now I'm going to transfer my lentils into the pot since I had way too much to cook in our rice cooker. And I'm going to go ahead and add that water as well. You can start with about a 1-to-1 ratio, but you will need to add more water as it evaporates until you get to the doneness that you like. You can have a little more on the al dente side or the more soft side. So I'm going to cut up these potatoes. I want them to stay in pretty large chunks. I want to allow my children to eat around the potatoes if they don't want them. Like, I prefer to have my lentils without the potatoes, but it does add a nice starchy addition. And for those who like it, it's nice. So I like to keep my chunks rather large. So I'm going to keep an eye on this because I don't like my lentils to get completely mushy. Okay, so now I've got my tomatoes, and I like these like little grape or cherry tomatoes, and I'm going to cut them in half. So here's a look at the lentils. This is about the doneness that I want, but I want to add a little bit more water so that it's a bit more on the slightly soupy side. Okay, so I've cut up all of those tomatoes. I'm going to get a little bit more ginger, and this time I'm going to cut it a little bit differently. I want to make these really fine slices because I want the ginger to be part of the experience of having the tomatoes, because we're going to cook those separately. So let's put that aside and get the cilantro. This is part of the garnish. I've got one bunch of cilantro. I'm just going to kind of lightly chop it up. I also have one jalapeno. This time I opted to cut them in fine dices, like in a dice. However, I do also like it if you just slice it and have like the circles, because I just like the appearance of that. But this was a spicy jalapeno, so I did it in small dices. And then something else for the garnish is a lemon or a lime, and you can just kind of squeeze that over your lentils when you're ready to eat them. Okay, so I've got my pan here that I had the onions in, removed the onions, added a little bit more oil and those slivers of ginger. I want to get them so they're almost crispy, because it has a nice kind of bite when you eat it. And then adding in those tomatoes, a bit more salt, and a very generous amount of paprika. You want to really get that paprika flavor going here. This is my own special addition here that I learned from my husband. Love the paprika tomatoes. Okay, let's put it all together. So I like having these all as additional garnishes. That way my children can choose how much they want. Of course, there's some fresh rice there, basmati rice, super easy to make, and some bread as well, in case you prefer to have your lentils with bread. You have lots of different options. This makes such a delicious, hearty, lovely meal. My children devoured this in no time. It is so delicious. This is the long version. This takes as much as making a complete full meal. It looks like a meal here, but a lot of times we serve lentils as a side dish, but this time it was the center of this entire meal. I like adding the cauliflower on top. It adds a really nice texture and flavor, and of course all of the garnishes are practically my favorite. As much as the lentils themselves, I love all of the garnishes. I hope that you try this recipe. Please let me know if you do. The entire recipe is down in the description box below. You can also find the shortened version of this recipe down in the description box below. And if you'd like to see what we're eating on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.